Coming up next.
That you know what your son or daughter is doing between 2:30 and 6. Because during those hours, my friends were at my house drinking and using drugs. So get them into athletics, something extracurricular, but have them busy all the time. Not too
Mm-hmm.
busy to where they're stressed out, but that you know where they are, you know who they're with, and you know what they're doing. Now, if they graduate high school and you have someone who's still floundering, you see, I went from school to school to school to school and kept failing out when really what to happen was to be taken out of school, have a very low stressful job. So let's say they're failing out of school, they're smoking pot. If they're going to live in your house, then there's has to be rules. You're going to drug test them, right? And I'll tell you that the most successful professions are professions that are monitored.
Welcome to Faith Over Addiction podcast, where the chains of fixing and striving are broken and joy is rediscovered in Christ. You are here because you know there's more for you, a life beyond addiction's chaos, rooted in God's peace and promises. This is the place where Christian women like you learn to release the weight of fixing and striving and instead lean into God's strength to create a home filled with love, grace, and hope. She is clothed with strength and dignity. Proverbs 31:25. That's you. You may not feel like it yet, but you are stronger than you know. And God has so much more for you than carrying someone else's addiction. Here, we'll uncover how to set healthy boundaries with love and a little humor. Find resilience and grace in the messy moments of life. Celebrate small victories and embrace joy like never before. Lean into God's promises for restoration and strength because He's not done with your story or your loved ones. This is your invitation to rise up, embrace your worth in God's kingdom, and take back what's been stolen by addiction: your peace, your joy, your future. Your faith is the foundation, and your boundaries are the bridge, and God's truth is your guide. I'm Tanya Joya, your host and fellow traveler on this journey through the chaos of addiction. I'm here to cheer you on, equip you with tools that work, and share the truth that's changed my life. The joy of the Lord is your strength. Nehemiah 8:10. Together, we'll uncover how to create safe, loving space for healing, starting with your own heart and home. By setting boundaries, trusting God's plan, and embracing His truth, you can reclaim your joy, your peace, and your family's future. Then you will be able to stand firm for your family and legacy as a kingdom daughter, a woman who can laugh at the days to come, knowing her identity is secure in Christ. So grab a cup of coffee or tea and get comfortable. Let's walk this journey together. We're about to take back what's been stolen, create a safe, healing space for you and your family, and rediscover the joy God has waiting for you. Welcome to the Faith Over Addiction podcast. I have the great honor here of being here with Matt Grace. I do want to put kind of a tag on this. We're going to talk about some really serious stuff. So if you have littles in the car, you may want to save this for later or put in your headphones. But the message is tremendous, so don't walk away from the podcast. Matt is the author of God Doesn't Relapse. What a great book. And this is specifically for you as a family member. Matt's going to get real deep into what happened with his family members, how these things came about. And as we've talked about before, you can be both a positive and a negative influence depending on your identity, your centeredness, and who you are. So this is going to help you work through some of those things. So Matt, go ahead and get started and let's walk through this.
Well, first, thank you for having me. It's an honor and a privilege and a responsibility. That's what was taught to me. So I wrote this book because I worked in the addiction space for 7 years and had over 10,000 hours of one-on-one mentoring experience with men of all ages.
Mm-hmm.
primarily high net worth families, because unfortunately the ancillary services in the addiction space are not covered by insurance. So I wrote this book because I wanted it to read a broader audience. And my book is part memoir, but also part case study. And it's really an example, and I use examples. Of course, I change all the names and places. You won't know who they are. But I use uh, case studies that illuminate successful families and unsuccessful families and the difference between that. And so I'm really, like we talked about before we started recording, there's this magnifying glass on addicts and alcoholics in this country that they need to get sober. And the family just thinks, oh, you go away for 60 days and you work on you, but I'm okay. And I'm really trying to break through to family. See, was, I say my father was my best friend, but he wasn't my father. He was my greatest
Mm-hmm.
enabler. And one of the things that I'm trying to teach parents is not the worst thing that you can do for your kid is to destroy their ambition. And whether it's with money or not giving them chores or not understanding the value of a dollar. We have a crisis in this country, specifically with young men who have a failure to launch into an adult life. And my father wore rose-colored glasses and wanted to sweep my addiction under the rug, even when everybody in the family said, Harvey, there's something seriously wrong with him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Open your eyes. And so, what I'm trying to inspire is our families to recover together. And I'll just real quickly give a case. I worked with one family. The father was a Harvard and Wharton grad, highly successful, but family was breaking apart. And so he was able to put his ego aside, come to me and say, you know what, Matt, I'm a real estate expert, but I don't know what I'm doing with regard to my son. Please help me. So it
Mm-hmm.
takes a tremendous amount of ego deflation to ask someone else for help in the first place. And so this family participated with a family therapist for 1 year, right? And so most families aren't willing to do that.
Mm.
And so I'm trying to, if there's any parents that are listening, it is such a tremendous help if the family can recover together.
When when you're talking, let's go back to your own father. We were talking about this beforehand. When you're talking about your own father, and he introduced you to some very interesting process addictions, what did he want? Was his resonance not to help you because he would have had to admit to things himself?
Well, one, I think he wanted to be my friend and live vicariously through me. He used to tell people jokingly that, and listen, I don't resent my father at all, so I want to make that very clear. I had
Mm-hmm.
11 years of sobriety when he died, and he trusted me to take care of him. So that was a gift.
Yeah.
Had I been using, he wouldn't have allowed me to be close to his medication.
Mm-hmm.
So my father, he was not, he wasn't malicious in his intent. He just wasn't a great dad.
Mm-hmm.
And he did the best that he could. That's the freedom that I have today, is I realize that he did the best that he could. But yes, he did not want to, he was in denial about where I was in my life, which many families are.
Mm-hmm. How do you begin to walk a family through the things that they are doing that's actually keeping themselves stuck and the child stuck? Because we're getting some value out of keeping the child stuck, or we're getting some value out of not participating in getting well. What are you sharing with families about that?
Families, so one of the reasons why I wrote the book and got out of the field was because there were so many families that couldn't even adhere to simple boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's alarming out there. One young man who he was, I think, 16 years old, living at home, no money, no job, no school, but he was the dictator in the household.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I got on a call with he and his mom, he called his mom the cunt word.
Mm-hmm.
I was so shocked and taken back at that amount of disrespect. And I said, I created a boundary for me professionally. I said, if I ever hear him call you that again, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
This
Mm-hmm.
is a teaching moment. I mean, the fact that, I mean, my father would have decapitated me. I mean, like that,
Yeah.
that word just, the amount of disrespect. So as you can see that she got comfortable being battered,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And so what I say to the parents, if your kid is living at home, who pays the mortgage, right? It's okay for parents to be parents and to put boundaries in place. And if you don't put boundaries in place, what happens is they either have a failure to launch or they die.
Here's the panic though. If I put boundaries in place, then I have to get involved in the system. Then the system takes over. Then the child is homeless and then the child dies. I
What
mean,
do you
it's
mean
a
by the
real
system?
downward spiral. So I call the police and I say, because I have young men who are much bigger than I am. If they
Mhm.
were disrespectful to me, there's nothing I could do to actually throw them out. I would have to get the system involved.
So I don't recommend throwing someone out, not at first. We talked
Mm-hmm.
about that also before. The treatment is always an option,
Mm-hmm.
right? IOP is an option.
Walk through IOP.
Okay, so listen, there's so many different therapeutic modalities and different, the treatment center industry is a behemoth uh, industry, multi-billion dollars. So it just depends on every case is a little different. But let's say Johnny is 19 years old and smoking pot, right? He's not a heroin addict and he's not stealing and being arrested, but he's has a failure to launch and he's failing out of school. What you can do is you can start because my parents were oblivious, right? They were born in the 40s,
Mm-hmm.
so they didn't know really what signs to look for. It's extremely important if we're gonna let's start in high school that you know what your son or daughter is doing between 2:30 and 6
Mm-hmm.
because during those hours my friends were at my house drinking and using drugs. So get them into athletics, something extracurricular, but have them busy all the time. Not
Mm-hmm.
too busy to where they're stressed out, but that you know where they are, you know who they're with, and you know what they're doing. Now, if they graduate high school and you have someone who's still floundering, you see, I went from school to school to school to school and kept failing out when really what I needed to be, what to happen was to be taken out of school, have a very low stressful job. So let's say they're failing out of school, they're smoking pot. If they're going to live in your house, then there's has to be rules. You're going to drug test them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'll tell you that the most successful professions are professions that are monitored.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at lawyers, doctors, pilots, dentists, they have the highest recovery rates because they have to comply with a governing body or they'll lose their license to practice medicine and whatever they do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I took that model from in my private practice and implemented it with families who would sign up for a year. So they can drug test them and say, hey, listen, if you're going to live here, there's no drugs and no booze, and you have to have a job. It doesn't have to be their career job. It just has to be a job,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Something not stressful, Starbucks, I don't know, art, something,
The
anything.
convenience store down the street,
Yes, it doesn't have
whatever.
to be, and it's just temporary, right? This is a learning moment. So when my father gave me a credit card when I went out to school and said this is for emergencies only, and after $10,000 on the credit card, and this is 30 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
he blew a gasket, flew out to California, and read me the riot act, but he wiped my debt clean.
Mm.
So my lesson is if your kids are racking up credit card debt, don't rescue them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do pay it off, have them pay you back. You have to
Absolutely.
understand the value of a dollar. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to budget yourself when you're older.
What does rescuing do for the child?
It keeps them stuck. My father kept rescuing me. I say that I was on the outside appearance, I looked polished and put together, but I was dying on the inside. I suffered from imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, my friends were succeeding in life, and my father was paying my bills, so we could keep up the image that I'm being successful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if you keep rescuing, uh, then people have to learn how to be an adult. And I think you ask parents, what do you want out of your child? Oh, I want them to be happy. And I'm saying, no, you want them to be functional. You're not always going to be happy. Happiness comes, happiness goes. But a functional adult in society is really what you're looking for.
What what was the benefit to your father? I mean, he spent money to fly out to California, read you the riot act. Did he take the credit card away?
Nope.
Didn't take the credit card away and paid off your debt. What was the benefit to him of doing the actions that he did the way that he did them?
See, he was old school and he said, can't you just pull yourself up by your bootstraps? Right?
Mm-hmm.
He didn't understand drug seeking behavior and what was actually going on. I mean, he was that oblivious. I don't know if parents are still that oblivious. They might be. But one of the things that I say is that you can love someone from a distance.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to cut them off and throw them out. They can live in a sober home. They can live in an apartment. You might help them a little bit with their rent, but they're going to stay stuck if you make things too easy. I mean, it's common. You would think it's common sense, but it's such a, and listen, I don't have kids. I'm just telling you from the 10,000 hours of experience that I've worked with families and my own experience. And my book is very raw and open about the mistakes that my family made with me that I don't want to see other kids go through.
So did your father, you said it earlier, did he get to keep this look of everything's okay, the family's okay, my son's okay by paying your debts and managing everything? So he got out of it this sense of I'm all right.
Yes, but also that he controlled me and he liked that control. And what happened was I couldn't make my own decisions because if I didn't do things if he wanted me to do something and I didn't want to do that, I always knew that he controlled my money purse
Mm-hmm.
and that I was always scared because as a drug addict, you'll do anything to keep that money train going. Anything.
Mm-hmm.
And when
Mm-hmm.
you have parents that are paying for all your bills, why would I want to get sober?
What do you think he was thinking though? I'll do anything to keep my son alive. I'll do anything to keep him on
No,
the right
he
track.
was in such denial about my addiction. He couldn't get out of what I say is that he was loving me to death.
Mm-hmm. And let's switch to your mom because we
Hmm.
talk a lot about guilt and shame spiral. What was
Yes.
happening there?
So listen, uh, my parents got divorced when I was 13. This is in the book. My parents' divorce took 10 years.
Wow.
It went to the Michigan State Supreme Court. You can look it up. And uh, it changed the law in the state of Michigan. It's a famous divorce case.
Hmm.
I wanted to believe that my father was someone else, but he wasn't. But getting back to my mom, they decided that it would be best if I lived with my father, which was a bad idea. But I'll tell
Mm,
you, when I was 16, I came home drunk, and there was one rule in my mom's condo: no drink or food on the white carpet. So I spilled red Kool-Aid. I mean, do you remember Kool-Aid? Are you old
oh
enough?
yeah. Oh yeah.
I spilled red Kool-Aid on the white carpet, and my mom started crying. And the more she started crying, the more I started laughing.
Mm,
And she gathered everything I owned, threw it in the middle of the street, and said, "Get out of my house." And she tried to draw a line in the sand,
hmm.
right? She was definitely more um, aware of my behavior, but she couldn't. It finally took her. This is actually how she saved my life. 13 years later, I came home from a crack and alcohol binge. There were two rules. One, no drugs or booze in the house. And two, if you're not going to be home, call before smartphones.
Mm, hmm.
I disappeared. I came home. 11:30 on a Saturday morning. I weighed 129 pounds. I'm
Ooh,
6 feet tall.
yeah.
She started sobbing, and then she collected herself and said, "If you're gonna die, it's not gonna be in this house. Get out. I'm changing the locks." Now, that was 13 years of lies, manipulation, theft, broken promises, not showing up. I held her hostage. And listen, it's okay after failed treatment and drug court and the whole system, like you talk about. I have touched on everything: treatment, sober homes, and abuse, the whole gamut. And she just had enough. I burned every bridge in my life. And I can tell you that God saved my life, but my mom pushed me closer to him.
Mm. Hmm. Tell us how God walks in.
So, it's so interesting because I grew up very religious
Hmm.
as a Jewish person.
Hmm.
I was bar mitzvahed in Israel.
Wow.
We followed Moses' journey through the desert on camels.
Wow.
Uh, we had a bus there too. Let's not lie. There was an air-conditioned bus for wimps like me that didn't want to sleep in the tent.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, imagine I was bar mitzvahed in Israel. I went to a private day school where I prayed every morning. And so when you're raised thinking you're chosen,
Mm.
uh, I kept hearing, "Hey, have you tried," from the men who I really respected, "have you tried getting on your knees to pray?" And I was so resistant to that idea. I say the things that I said I would never do are the things that saved my life. And the only reason why I wanted to get on my knees and pray is because the drugs and alcohol were killing me, and I
Mm.
had burned every bridge in my life. So I had to make a decision. And so I had pain is the greatest motivator. Right? I
Hmm.
OD'd. I was a TV reporter. I OD'd at work in front of my coworkers. I slammed into a parked F-150 going 60 miles an hour. I broke into people's homes. I stole. I went through a lot of pain, but I'm sorry, a lot of consequences. But it was the pain, the deep-rooted and spiritual pain, that I looked in the mirror and I said, you know what? I'm either going to kill myself or I'm going to start to pray. So I know that we've complicated addiction for so long. It can be so simple sometimes. When I got on my knees and I asked God, I begged God to spare me, I had a white light spiritual experience that lasted 25 minutes.
Wow.
The room lit up with a bright light. It was dark, and I the obsession to use was removed from me instantaneously.
Hmm.
And what I say in my book is that I realized that I wasn't chosen for my religion, but I was chosen to be of service. And that's the kind of the enlightenment and the spiritual shift that I needed to then say, you know what? I come from privilege. Uh, we can get into service later, but there's so many people who have nothing. And I realized early on it's my responsibility to carry this message and to try to inspire other people to uh, initiate some kind of prayer life into their routine.
Hmm. So based on you have this very religious upbringing. It's pretty intense. You have all of these things that happen to you, and then after this white light experience, what were the choices that you made? How did you bring God back into, or allow him? He was always there. He
Well,
never
he
left.
was always there, but here's the interesting thing. I would say all these prayers in Hebrew and I had no idea what I was saying.
Mm.
I think what happened is that when I got on my knees for the first time, that God could see the intent in my heart, that it wasn't a foxhole prayer, that I was desperate and willing to make the necessary changes. And I think that's why I was spared.
Mm.
And
How
so then
do you maintain the connection now?
I
What
get
do
on my knees every day, every day. Sometimes I forget, like everybody else. Sometimes I forget on vacation. But I can tell you that's where I got the title of the book, God Doesn't Relapse.
uh-huh.
Because, and in my book, I share other profound stories of people who got sober through the direst of consequences.
Mhm.
And I talk about faith because I became gravely ill in 2019 or 2020 from COVID.
Mhm.
I got so sick that I thought I could have ended up in a wheelchair.
Mm,
And so I was very close to, and the pain was excruciating. The COVID, I don't know if it's the vaccination, I have no idea, but something was triggered that I was in so much pain I wanted to die. I was thinking, even at 16 years of sobriety, I want to kill myself again,
mm,
but this time because I have chronic pain.
mm-hmm,
And so what I talk about is when people say that yoga is my higher power, and I definitely respect everybody's journey to their own higher power. But what I want to say is that what happens when you have a chronic illness and you can't, and you're bedridden?
mm, mm-hmm,
Because it's going to happen to all of us at some point or another time, right? I thought I'm 45. I'm not going to get old. I'm not going to get sick till I'm 80, right? You don't,
right.
when you're a young man, you don't think about that. And I said to myself, if I kill myself, what kind of message is that going to be towards new people in recovery? That just because I have an illness, that I checked out.
Mm,
So I
mm-hmm,
doubled down in on my faith in God. Because if you think about God or a higher power, think about the vow that you take with your spouse, the vows, or the responsibility of being a parent,
mm-hmm,
right? That you love your family is number one to most people.
mm-hmm.
Spouse, parents, kids. So if something goes wrong, do you give up on them right away? And so I talk about that commitment to God, that just because something's bad, I believe it was a test to see how loyal I really was.
And how did that play out for you?
Well, because when you're that ill, you have to come up with something because you're going and saying that it took a while for medication to kick in to where I could function as a human again.
Mm-hmm,
So when you're that desperate, I I just made a decision to push all my chips in, no pun intended, to gambling, but
yeah.
another problem I had. But I just became all in because I said, you know what, this is probably a test. And I said, if this is, what am I supposed to learn from this? Maybe it was because for a while I convinced myself because I was such a cruel drunk but a cruel person before I picked up a drink. Maybe this is payback,
Mm, mm-hmm.
right? And people say God doesn't work that way, but we don't know how he really works. And it was, you know what? There's other people who have it much worse than I do. That's where perspective kicks in. You know how
Mm-hmm.
many people get sick and don't have money to take care of themselves?
Absolutely.
It's alarming. And I'm blessed because I grew up on third base with an advantage of coming from privilege.
Mm-hmm.
And what I did was what got me through each and every day is I said, God, I'm not going to have to worry about a job or a home. So please take care of someone else today.
And that's another piece of what you talk about with service.
Listen, you don't have to be an alcoholic. Let me tell you how service changed my life. All right. I was a deplorable kid. I really was. Mean, expelled from two preschools. By the time I was 6, the school therapist told my parents she thought I could end up in prison.
Mm-hmm.
And being entitled, thought to myself that this world owes me something. That's how I walked around. I didn't care about anybody else. It was all about me. None of the relationships in my life were equitable.
Mm-hmm.
I was a taker at the highest level. So once I had that spiritual shift, because you have to understand when you grow up in a bubble in an upscale neighborhood, you're kind of obsessed with yourself, right? If unless you're a do-good kid, which I wasn't, who was going to soup kitchens in high school, I was not doing that. When I started serving others, it lifted my spirit. And that's one of the things that I say is that millions of dollars will not protect you from a relapse. I have money.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to buy my happiness. And guess what? Maybe non-alcoholics can find so much happiness and money, but for the people who struggle spiritually, if you can just get out of yourself and try to help someone else have a better day for 1 hour, That's 1 hour where you're not obsessed with your own pain.
Hmm.
It's so monumental. And I just want to touch real quickly because I've worked with schizophrenics, with people who are struggling with bipolar disorder, everything. This is a great story. There's a young man, severely bipolar, who kept relapsing. So I said to his sponsor, who was a good friend of mine, I said, why don't you try to get him into some service? So he got a service position on a Tuesday night and a Sunday night at a meeting. And he did that for 5 years. And he's been clean and sober longer than that now. But his disposition has changed so dramatically. And this is someone who's bipolar. So I'm not recommending service as an addition. It's an addition to enhance your life. I'm not saying stop medicine
Right.
at
Don't
all.
stop treatment. Don't stop
No,
medicine. This is an
no,
addition
this is
to.
just an additional layer of protection.
Mm,
And it is so rewarding. And you know what? It gave me perspective because you know what I'm most passionate about is volunteering and trying to help men and women. But when you're a sober man, I'm not sponsoring women and I'm not, right. That's,
sure. Absolutely. That's
I've worked
crossing
with them.
some lines.
I work with them professionally, but I go every Sunday to a meeting in Pontiac, Michigan. It's a very blue collar town that's been forgotten about. It's a rough town. And that's where I see men who come in who have nothing.
Mm,
No car, they're felons, a neck tattoo or a face tattoo, they're missing teeth. I call them the forgotten ones.
hmm.
And I'm tired of hearing about, I mean, it's sad that Matthew Perry died, right? And it's all these we've become obsessed with celebrities in recovery, but everybody's forgotten about the people in Pontiac.
Right. Right. Right.
So I'm also trying to inspire mentors, mentorship.
As you bring service into your life, so this is a great concept from Bill W. too, of bringing service in. Hey, this is what keeps me sober, is by going and serving others.
And I've come around, I know that there are other ways to get sober out of AA, and I'm not AA's mouthpiece by any means whatsoever. You don't have to, if you go to Smart Recovery, you can be
Yeah.
of service. If you go to Dharma, you can be of service. And if you don't want to go to a recovery, there's going to be a time in your life, let's say you don't want to go to any program. And if you're miserable and if you're struggling, just going to help someone else. I Googled the definition of happiness. There's probably a lot, but it said doing something for someone else and not expecting anything in return.
Yes. And I mean, it could be as simple as going to your PetSmart and helping with the animals if you can't take people, those
Anything.
types of things. What I've seen this with folks who have addiction, the pain is so deep, they can't see other people. They don't really see that they exist. What happened that brought you out of that?
Yeah, here's the thing, because I've spent 10,000 hours in living rooms across the country, right? When someone says that they can't be of service, they're just not done. I don't care what anybody says. I'm a drug addict, a low bottom drug addict. I was smoking crack and using crystal, pawning things. I didn't want to stop. And so we have to have an honest conversation. And I'm not talking about someone who's, withdrawing off heroin or going through DTs, right? I'm not talking about that subset. I'm saying for the garden variety addict alcoholic, don't tell me that you can't go be of service anywhere. And with porn and gambling, if you're watching porn 3 hours a day, go volunteer for 1 hour a day. And guess what? Now you've cut it down to 2 hours of porn.
Yes. What if you feel like you said you were a rough kid? What if you feel like I'm just not safe to be around other people? I'm mean, I'm manipulative, I can't go be of service.
Well, yeah, I mean, what are you talking about? Sociopaths?
No, no, I mean there's still this I'm a monster to my kids. I yell and I scream at them. How could I go help somebody
Well,
else?
then I would, if it's that, because you're talking to someone who had severe behavioral issues, right? Like in kindergarten, I was telling my teacher to go F herself, like serious behavioral issues. Therapy is, I highly recommend therapy. But there's no disrespect to the MSW degree. It's so easy to get. Seriously, I mean, I got my bachelor's degree in addiction studies, and school is just, they've made school way too easy, in my opinion. And there's just a lot of, it's watered down. The field is watered down, so it's hard to find a quality therapist sometimes. But that's the other issue. What are you willing to do? Okay,
Right.
so you're too broken to go to service. Can you go to therapy? But then, you have to show up to therapy sober, right? If you're going to use EMDR, are you familiar with that?
Yes, been through it
Right.
myself.
Brilliant, right? It was created for Vietnam veterans. Francine Shapiro, 1979. I've seen tremendous things happen with EMDR, but you have to show up sober, right?
Right,
If you're drunk, EMDR is not going to work.
right, right. Well,
That's
and
I'm
for
not,
the women who are supporting, you have to choose to show up for yourself. It is doing service if you show up for yourself in therapy. If you show up for yourself to be there, because like you said, your mom setting boundaries, showing up for herself was what created the space for you to hit either bottom or to seek out something that's going to change your life.
yeah, so I'm a huge believer in therapy. Um, I'm a product of eventually I found a good therapist. But what I say is that God is my primary therapist because there's going to come a time, and this is why I think a higher power is so important. Treatment centers close, right? Therapists retire, but God is always open for business.
Yes.
You can't
That's your
like
next book right there.
you can't, right? Like we have to, you can't live in treatment. I know some of them would like that. Go to treatment. Now go to my IOP. Now stay in my sober home. Now do this, right? It's unfortunately there are some good, honest characters and there's a lot of bad characters. But what are you going to do at 6 years? You're 6 years sober and you have a crisis, right? Well, I mean, it's important to have friendships and lean on fellowships and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, if your son is murdered, if you bury your wife and your child, right? Those I put stories in my book of people who went through hell and talked about how their faith got them through it.
So give us some simple things. Somebody who's listening to this podcast right now, maybe doing dishes, doing laundry, out for a walk. What are some simple things they can do to connect with the God of their understanding who is always there?
Okay, so I never tell anybody how to pray, right? That is a very personal journey. But I'm just asking people to, if you are in despair and you were where I was, I highly suggest getting on your knees and asking whatever higher power you believe in, or just saying, you know what, please just help me today. And what happens is recovery is about routine. So if you do that on the first day, you start having, and then the second day, and then the third day, you build a routine. And because we're so undisciplined, it's very important to build a routine. So what I recommend is some people need to go to treatment, but what about people who don't have any money, right? Because that's where I volunteer. And that's what this guy said to me. This guy was 67 years old with nothing, probably homeless. And I said, try to help someone else. If you have 5 days clean, go get a cup of coffee for someone and introduce yourself and shake their hand. But it could be that simple.
Mm-hmm.
Or get a service position, right? Or if you feel that you need to get on a medically assisted treatment, which I don't love, maybe that's what you need to do for a while. That's not, but I talk about how most of the lived experience I had with my friends on Suboxone was not good. Um,
For families setting boundaries like your mom did, where do they find that kind of strength?
well, it's difficult. Uh, Listen, it's not easy. Otherwise, my parents would have cut me off long before 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want them to be functional in society, the less you do is the better it is for them. Like if they don't want to go to school, then they have to get a job. They have to be moving forward one step at a time. Because if they're just living at your house and or if you're paying for their cell phone and I'm just going to pay for this and I pay for that, but they're not willing to meet you halfway,
Mm-hmm.
then you are an obstruction. So I'm not saying throw them out to the wolves, but pay the bare minimum. If they can't go to school, get a job.
Mm-hmm.
If they can't get a job and they are suffering so greatly, get them a quality therapist.
Mm-hmm.
But do something to get them moving in the right direction.
What what resources do you what resources are in the book for those families who are trying to do this? Where do you point them?
Well, so as I said, I spent my career working with high net worth families
Right,
just because that's the only people who could afford the type of services that I do or used to do.
right.
So my website is macrace.com, and I have examples on my website. One of them being my father, and the other one about the young man who called his mom the bad name. And I kind
Uh-huh.
of lay out those stories just as something to learn from. But in my book, it talks about what to do if your kid is out of control. But they have to be able to be out of denial, right? That they have to have a be able to. I'm asking families to embrace their addict or alcoholic in their life. It doesn't mean you have to enable them, but just embrace them.
Mm-hmm.
Recover together. Get your own help. Once you start to get your own help, you will learn how to navigate, whether it's through Al-Anon or through a therapist. Boundaries save lives, and boundaries can catapult children into a functional adult life.
That's fabulous, Matt. Again, tell us where we can find you in all these stories. I want to end there because it's very clear.
Yeah, so mattgrace.com. Right now, I am speaking for free. So I've started something called the National Sobriety Tour. So if you leave your information at the bottom of the National Sobriety Tour page, I will come and speak at no cost because I believe that I was spared to do that
Mm-hmm.
until my book publishes, which is August 11th. And then the book is also on Amazon or Barnes and Nobles. It's God Doesn't Relapse: Sex, Drugs, and the Life That Almost Killed Me.
Fantastic, Matt. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. It was an honor. I enjoyed it.
Thanks so much for tuning into the Faith Over Addiction podcast. Remember, nothing changes until something changes. Today is your day to step out in faith and make a difference. You are a daughter of the King, a woman who can spark incredible ripple effects of hope and healing, not just in your own life, but in your family, your community, and God's kingdom. If this episode encouraged you, bless someone else by sharing it. Send it to a friend who needs a little hope or post it on Instagram and tag me. I'd love to hear what resonated most with you. And hey, if you're ready to reclaim your God-given identity and create a safe, loving space for yourself and those you care about, let's talk. Book a quick call with me today, and I'd love to hear your story and help you take the next step. Oh, and don't forget to head over to Apple Podcasts, search for Faith Over Addiction, and leave me a review. Your feedback not only makes my day, but helps other women find this podcast and step into freedom too. You are strong, you are loved, and the joy of the Lord is your strength. Nehemiah 8:10. Until next time, keep walking boldly into the life God has for you.